right, let's talk about the narcissistic parent and the long-term effects and healing strategies. What are the traits of a narcissistic parent? It's someone that needs a lot of control. Often they use manipulation or guilt or fear to control a child's decisions. Another characteristic is they often lack empathy. And so they can be invalidating to a child's feelings and needs, or just even ignore those feelings and needs altogether. And then love is conditional. And so offering love is really approval based. And when a child meets certain expectations, often that are put on by the parent, then that's when love is given. And then there's often high expectations and perfectionism placed on a child. So these unrealistic demands, and again, for a child to perform and achieve in a certain way. A parent that's narcissistic will do a lot of projection and blame. And so they'll shift the blame onto their child for their problems or even the failures within the family. And lastly, the parent often needs admiration. And so they can need admiration from others, and then they can want their child to have the admiration as well. And then that can be a little tricky too, because then there can be jealousy around the admiration. So, what are the long-term effects of growing up with a narcissistic parent? As you can imagine, this is a really challenging experience that a lot of people go through. And so the effects are someone that has a narcissistic parent often then has some low self-esteem. They're constantly now critical of themselves. Those criticisms that their parents gave them, they now often take on themselves. They often feel unworthy. Often someone will then also have people-pleasing tendencies. When love was conditional, you're seeking approval from others. And then as an adult, you then often people-please to get that same love. Someone can also then have a challenging time setting boundaries. Saying no in relationships is really hard. Often someone can develop anxiety and depression. They're used to just chronic stress of being around a narcissistic parent, and so they often have a lot of emotional dysregulation. And lastly, there can be attachment issues. So they can have challenging time forming healthy relationships, and that's often due to fear of abandonment or having distrust. So, how do you recognize if you've had a narcissistic parent? So, if you're experiencing a lot of signs of some lingering emotional effects of self doubt and excessive self criticism, an inability to prioritize your needs, you never feel good enough no matter how much you achieve, that may have been an experience that you've had. So let's move into healing strategies for adult children of narcissistic parents. Let's start with self-compassion. You want to treat yourself with kindness and really challenge those self-critical thoughts. Because remember, often those self-critical thoughts are just you now repeating what that narcissistic parent may have said to you, and they become your own voice. You're going to want to be able to set boundaries. So that's both emotional and physical boundaries, especially with your narcissistic parent, but also with everybody in your life. So that includes coworkers, friends, everybody, other family members. Often people will seek therapy to address childhood wounds around this, and that can be really helpful to just reframe negative beliefs. You're going to want to do a lot of inner child work and really connect with your inner child, and recognizing that child was deprived of love and support, and being able to try to provide that for yourself. And lastly, you're going to want to try to build your self-esteem. And so that can look like celebrating those small wins, having affirmations for yourself, surrounding yourself around people that are positive to you, that are supportive, that can recognize your many strengths and let you know about them. And so, how do you navigate the relationship with a narcissistic parent. There's got to be a lot of acceptance versus a lot of this idea of changing the parent. It's pretty hard to change somebody who's narcissistic and to change a narcissistic parent. And so the sooner you can come to acceptance around who your parent is, the better off you're going to be. And then another strategy is possibly limiting contact with that parent. And whether that means less contact, or in some cases, if the relationship is just too unhealthy, maybe it's no contact. And then lastly, really enforcing boundaries. So having assertive communication, being very clear about what you need, and just doing what you can to protect your mental well-being. And so it's really common, if you've had a narcissistic parent, that these wounds are very deep. And you can do a lot to prioritize your self-care and seek support and practice self-compassion. And often it's just very helpful to see a third party, a therapist, to really unpack the trauma that a parent like this can put on a child. And that's something that at Therapy Now SF, we work with a lot of clients that have maybe difficult family dynamics or a narcissistic parent. And that can be something that we can help you with to really process what you've been through, and then also develop new coping skills, new strategies to both deal with that parent and to deal with yourself, and how you communicate with yourself and how you manage yourself, and just developing all of those self-compassionate techniques.